Hello everyone, I'm Milad Naderloo, postdoctoral researcher at Delft University of Technology, the Netherlands. I'm working with Professor Hadi Hajibegi and Dr. Anna Pleimakers. It is a great honor to be part of the Energy Simulation Summit 2025, Rio de Janeiro. Today, I will present part of my research and results titled Geomechanical Alteration of Sandstone under Active and Static Hydrogen Rock Interaction. But before delving to the methodology and results, I'll walk you through briefly for the background and then how this background reaches for the why and purpose of the study and the project. So we know that a successful energy transition requires reliable, large-scale storage solution. So if we want to tackle the issue between demand and supply in energy market, we have to store clean fuel such as hydrogen in a massive and large scale. And we know that the geological formations such as porous reservoirs and salt caverns are among the most promising ones for storing energy carrier fluid like hydrogen. But it's not that easy, and it poses several challenges, and one of them is geomechanical challenges. What geological challenge means is we will expose and impose a cyclic stress condition in our reservoir by storing and producing hydrogen. The day that we have surplus of hydrogen and energy, we will store, and then the day that we have the demand, we will produce. So by doing so, we are imposing a cyclic condition for effective stress. So we know that this is well established in rock mechanics science that materials, reservoir rock, will behave differently under cyclic loading and will induce damage. Another challenge is rock fluid interaction, hydrogen rock interaction that can dissolve some minerals, precipitate some minerals, and consequently change geomechanical behavior. So this brings to why and purpose of this project. And if here we look at all those aspects of rock fluid interaction, hydrogen rock interaction, we will see different aspects such as biotic reaction, abiotic reaction, because hydrogen is a different gas compared to methane, compared to CO2. So then rock fluid interaction in this case also is different and needs to be studied. If we have a biotic reaction, there are microbes there in our reservoirs and they like to eat hydrogen and produce some bioproducts like acetic acid and H2S that can interact with our reservoir rock and change the mechanical and geomechanical properties. And also we have abiotic reaction, which is the main focus in this research, or geochemical reactions between minerals, existing minerals in our reservoir rock and cap rock with hydrogen, and all those other aspects for the rock fluid interaction like wettability, absorption, and desorption. All this changed together plus cyclic stress condition can affect integrity and geomechanical properties of our reservoir rock and cap rock. So in this study, we want to see the coupled effect of cyclic stress and rock fluid interaction or hydrogen rock interaction on geomechanical properties. So to do so, we pick two types of sandstone or reservoir rock. One red filter sandstone, which is quartz rich, and then one yellow filter sandstone, which is clay rich. And then we are benefiting from two types of reaction methods or exposing to hydrogen. So one of them is active or dynamic exposure, utilizing core flood experiment through sequence of drainage and imbibition. And we are using quartz-rich sandstone for this experiment. And then the other method is a static reaction, which we are using high clay content, clay-rich sandstone for this experiment. And here you can see the conditions. We tried to make the conditions close to the reservoir and field conditions, temperatures, 100 degrees of Celsius, pressure 150 bar, 100 bar, and the same brine for two types of reaction with the pH of 5. So before and prior to reaction test, we also do some preliminary tests to measure the porosity, P-wave velocity, and SEM pictures from the samples before exposure to hydrogen and also after exposure. And then we have a control test or control group of tests or background test just exposed to brine or so-called brine only. We're going to compare this group to the groups that they were exposed to hydrogen in an active way and a static way. And after exposure, which for the static one was 6 months of exposure, and for the active one was 2 months of exposure, we take the samples plus the samples from the control group for the geomechanical test or cyclic geomechanical test. And here you can see the apparatus. So we apply different confining pressure, different stress paths to build up also failure envelope and see what is the difference between failure envelope before and after exposure. In addition to that, we are applying cyclic stress condition within linear zone of each experiment. And we are adopting the frequency and amplitudes relative to yield point in each confining pressure. So this is the design for our cyclic geomechanical test. And stepping to results here, the results from the active exposure, we can see different parameters from geomechanical study, like Young's modulus, final strength, total inelastic deformation for the active exposure quartz-rich sandstone. Apart from total inelastic deformation, we don't see a major change for Young's modulus, final strength, and also yield point for the samples that actively exposed to hydrogen. So we should keep in mind, we do see more inelastic deformation after exposing to hydrogen, but we should keep in mind that we are comparing actively exposed to samples just exposed to brine statically. And if you look at the static exposure results with the different geomechanical parameters like yield point, Young's modulus, total inelastic deformation from cyclicity, and also final strength, we don't see meaningful change before and after exposure. And next step, looking at the failure envelopes, in the left-hand side for the active exposure and the right-hand side for the passive exposure, and extracting internal friction coefficient and the cohesion from the failure envelope, we don't see a major change before and after exposure for both groups. There is just a very, very minor change for the active exposure on the quartz-rich sandstone. And at the end, we took the samples for the SEM image. Since we did have the SEM image before exposure, we did try to have SEM image after exposure for both quartz-rich exposed actively to hydrogen and clay-rich exposed statically to hydrogen. So a brief result is that scanning electron microscopy or SEM image analysis revealed no microstructural change in various clay types, quartz, and feldspar. So all in all, our results showed that exposure to hydrogen for quartz-rich sandstone and clay-rich sandstone has no major effect on geomechanical parameters, which is a very good news for the underground hydrogen community. Thank you so much for listening to my talk.